This is Blue Lift, a podcast dedicated to amplifying the underrepresented Democratic voices in Tennessee, working tirelessly to bring progressive change to the volunteer state. Here's your host, Peggy Kingsbury.
That's right. From grassroots organizers to community leaders, from urban centers to rural towns, we'll highlight the diverse perspectives and powerful voices that often go unheard. Join us as we lift up the blue wave and shine a light on the path toward a more inclusive and equitable Tennessee. Again, I'm your host, Peggy Kingsbury, and this is Blue Lift, where every voice matters. Let's get started. Well, friends, welcome back to Blue Lift. My guest today is Charles Uffelman, and he goes by Chazz.
That's it.
And I'm so excited to have him with you. I'm using the correct pronouns, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so excited to have Chazz with us today. He's someone that I've known for a little while, and I'm just constantly impressed with his knowledge, deep knowledge of Tennessee politics, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Chazz is a graduate of the University of Memphis with a bachelor's degree in political science. And Chazz, I want to talk through your resume just a little bit because it seems like you have been involved in politics since you were a child.
Pretty much.
At what age would you pin that?
When I was in 7th grade, I was getting off the bus at my grandmother's house every day, and she had CNN on, and we were talking about the huge, divisive Democratic primary, which was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton.
Oh, wow. You're so young. Okay.
And I was just listening in. And it was later in 2008 when, after Barack Obama had won, that I got off the school bus one day at my mom's office. And there were these two women there. And they had homemade signs. One said, "Save the drama." The other one said, "Vote Obama." This is it.
I love it.
It was with markers and everything. And this was in Erin, Tennessee. 1,200 people in this little town.
So you say that Erin, not Aaron.
Erin.
Erin. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
No one ever knows what I'm trying to say. They think I'm saying herein, but it's Erin. And so I see them and I go inside of my mom's office, and this is after school, and she's looking at me because she knows I've been watching CNN with my grandmother, and I was like, "I want to do that." She says, "I know." So she hands me some markers and some poster, and I make my own sign. I print off the little Obama picture of the tricolor, and I go out there with them, and I have the best time. And it's a little later in the year than it is now. Crisp fall
a little
air,
cooler, yeah.
Leaves are starting to turn. Light jacket on, just a nice breeze, and you're just holding these signs, and you go from being an 8th grader who watches CNN to a full participant democracy with the stroke of a marker. And that right there has been my guiding principle, is that all of us can do this. And that's a feeling I've been chasing, is putting people together. I never got to work with those two women again, but I went to school the next day and we said, let's do this. And so we formed a little committee, Houston County for Obama, went and got the signs and went and got walk list and door list and phone list and all that, brought it back. And then Obama won Houston County. 60 something votes, and there was an article in the Tennessee, and then we got to go to the inauguration. It was really fun, and I was 15, 14. I was really young.
Wow, that is a great story. I just knew there was something deeper when I read on your background. So that is a beautiful story, and the way you tell it, I can just feel the crisp air and the excitement that you must have felt. And how cool is it that you sort of found your calling so early in life? Yeah,
it's just kind of at one next step to the next. And I hope everyone gets an opportunity to feel that even if you don't want to work in politics full time like me, that like if you get excited about Kamala Harris or Gloria Johnson or Miriam or Megan Barry or Karen Reynolds or Claire Jones, and we're about to have some crisp fall air. Yes, we're getting a little bit. So get your walk list and get out there. It's a good time.
Absolutely. Well, you worked on a campaign, A.C. Wharton for mayor. Was that mayor of Erin?
Mayor of Memphis.
Mayor of Memphis.
So I went to school in Memphis, and Erin, I love it. It's not a very diverse place, and I was a farm boy, and I wanted to get out and see things. So Memphis is where I needed to be, and I worked on a bunch of campaigns there.
And you worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign?
That was the first, A.C. Wharton was the first time I got like a real paycheck and was doing it, knocking doors every day and feeling the stress of a buzzing campaign office. And then right after that, a bunch of us went over to Bernie. And that's when it went from, oh, this is a cool job to this is a movement. This is,
oh, wow.
And just the energy of that Bernie campaign in 2016 was really fun. I had a lot of friends on Hillary too. So I've never been one to really like the rancor of a hard primary.
Right.
But I love that movement work.
Cool. And then you got hooked up with the Tennessee Democratic Party and you became a field organizer. What's a field organizer do?
So I had been a field organizer for A.C. Wharton and Bernie Sanders, and I graduated the University of Memphis, and I didn't know what to do. Donald Trump had just gotten elected. We were all freaking out. We were all scared about all his
fetal position, crying.
All his rhetoric about what he said he was going to do to this community or that community. And so the way I've learned to process is get to work. We don't agonize, we organize.
Good point.
And so, I didn't come up with that, so don't quote me. Someone smarter than me did. So I come home to Houston County, and my county party was dead. And we decided, we showed up at this diner, and we're like, this can't be it.
Is Erin the biggest city in Houston County?
It's two big cities, Erin and Tennessee Ridge.
Okay.
Happening place, both of them. And so we're down at the Ridge restaurant, and it's a February. Trump had just been inaugurated, and we're like, this can't be it. And we got to working. And so I was like, I know what I can do. I don't have a job yet. I've been out of college for like 3 months. My parents are like, you got to get a job.
It's time to get a job.
You got to get off the couch. And so until I found a job, it was my county party. I kind of threw myself into that. We had to put together a banquet, and we started recruiting candidates and doing all the organizing that we do. And the state party was then hiring as part of Resistance Summer. And we were just knocking doors and activating people earlier than we ever had. That was a DNC program, and we got to work. And that led to me working for Carl Dean for governor in 2018. Met some really good friends. It was not a race that I think many people would look at as successful, but it had just a really talented team of organizers.
Yes.
My boss, Elizabeth Henderson, and some of these others that have gone on to do big things in Tennessee or had a history of doing it, taught me a lot about managing people, running campaigns, getting to know the whole cycle from start to finish, how things change. Because what you organize in the off year is very different than what you organize in October.
Correct.
And so seeing how that spaced out. And then I did some stuff for Metro Council, some friends running for office there in 2019. And right after the Metro race is when I got a really fun call. And it was one of the campaign staff for the Senator of California, Kamala Harris, running for president, and they needed help in Iowa. And so off I went. And I was in Riceville, Iowa. I didn't think I would go to a town smaller than where I was from.
But you did.
I did 400 people in Riceville, Iowa, and started organizing there just like I did in Erin. I jumped into the church there in Osage United Methodist Church. And was getting
you
to
went
meet
to
folks.
some potlucks, didn't you?
I went to some
or do
potlucks.
they call them hot dish up there?
Hot dish.
Yeah.
Hot dish.
Well, I lived
big.
in Minnesota a little while. I've had hot dish. If it doesn't have tater tots on it, it doesn't count.
It's fine. Tater tots and cheese.
Absolutely.
I think we should bring more of that here.
You just throw that on some hamburger helper and you got yourself a hot dish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I was 5 miles from Minnesota.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
close.
And you could smell the hog. I won't finish the rest of that phrase, but it was they were cutting hog excrement into the fields, and I was driving around going to diners and meeting folks. And
the sugar beets don't smell that great either. I don't know if you remember the sugar beets, but when they're processed, it's making sugar, but it does not smell sweet.
They say it smells better in the summer. I had a lot of fun with the people.
Oh, yeah.
Really, Iowans. I always say Southerners were nice, Midwesterners are good.
Yeah.
They mean what they say. So that was really enjoyable. And then Kamala dropped out. That was really hard. And so we spent like a week in Des Moines offboarding off that campaign. And that is getting trainings and doing, exit interviews. But then it's kind of like that moment on Survivor, Drop Your Buffs, where they take off their buffs. Have you watched Survivor?
No, I haven't.
Well, don't tell Justin Canoe you haven't watched. No, he did Amazing Race.
He did Amazing Race twice.
Anyway, so on Survivor, you're on teams and then you drop your buffs. Well, in presidential campaigns, you drop your campaign material and then you're in your headquarters in Des Moines and they set up back-to-back meetings with all the other presidential campaigns.
Okay, so you're trying to figure out where to go.
If you want to go. And so, and they're very kind. Like,
sure.
You had the Biden people and the Warren people and all these different campaigns. They're coming, they'll bring you a case of beer and,
they want the good ones.
They want the good ones and they want, but they also want to make space. They don't want to push you too hard. So you listen to all of them and we, just kind of commiserate on the race. And Kamala came out and spent a few days with us to wrap up the campaign.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was nice. And then that's when the Warren team called me and I got to stay in Iowa and finish out the caucus. And then I stayed on the Warren team and came back to Tennessee to work Super Tuesday with her. And that was March 3rd of 2020. And I had, my father had open heart surgery on March 2nd.
Oh my. There
was a tornado about 10 hours after that surgery. We were having to wake up the next morning with the supporter housing I was in was the door had gotten blown open with the tornado.
Wow.
And then we were having to wake up and because we had our South Carolina team on the Warren campaign had come to Nashville to help us with the final sprint. And they stayed in the path of the tornado.
Wow.
So we're finding
show up,
them.
We have a tornado.
Yeah. Yes. And they'd been there for like 3 days. So we're trying to find them, make sure they're okay. They all were. No one got harmed. And then all the campaigns are having to band together to sue Davidson County to keep to keep the election open later.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
And then us as organizers are calling into Davidson County and we are telling folks that the election's open later and making sure they're okay and having to do disaster response. And then I got that Warren lost that night. She dropped out a few days later. I got a call to move to Kentucky with the McGrath campaign within like a week. And I moved to Paducah and I think Kentucky shut down the next day.
It's like you're a nomad, but everywhere you go, calamity.
It felt like it for that 6 months. And I was alone from like March 12th to second week of May.
That's a long time.
It was like solitary confinement because I was covering Paducah. There was no other campaign staff in Paducah, Kentucky.
So there you were, just working alone. But you amassed a team and then things
we built a
happened.
Team.
Yeah.
And that was the first time really building a team from the ground up.
Oh, fun. A good
and
experience.
Had 3-4 organizers and we worked for McGrath. And it was challenging primary, challenging general. And I get to the end of that and that's 2020. And I'm tired and I miss home.
I'm sure.
And I hate organizing and building these beautiful teams of volunteers and then just leaving them.
Right.
So I was like, I've got to go home. I've got to figure out a way to continue to do the work I love with the people I love. And that's when I ended up at Organized Tennessee. Am I going too deep into this?
No, Organized Tennessee is good. Tell us what they do because I know that, but our listeners probably don't.
Yeah, so it's a 501c3 organization. It's nonpartisan. So that was very different. I took off my partisan hat. Could not advocate for candidates like I was used to. You advocate for voter participation. They're still existing. They do a lot of really good stuff. They recruit and train poll observers. So these folks, they're nonpartisan. They go into the polling place. They make sure that the election laws are followed. They make sure that every voter gets their opportunity to vote. Basically, in federal law, if you walk into that polling place and you think you're a qualified voter and the evidence leads you to be one, then you should be able to at least vote provisional ballot.
Correct.
Tennessee law,
not so much.
A little different.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, a little different vibe. So that's what poll observers do. They make sure they advocate for voters, making sure everyone gets an opportunity. So if you're not interested in knocking doors and making phone calls,
you can do that.
You can do that. And that's for Republicans, Democrats, Independents. It's a great organization. A good friend of mine took my job when I came back to the partisan side.
And that would be?
Last August, after all of the Tennessee 3 stuff, I was feeling very called back into the fight. And that's when there was a position opened with the House and Senate Democratic Caucus in the Tennessee Legislature. So that is run by Senator London Lamar, Representative John Ray Clemens. There are caucus chairs in both houses. And they hire a joint political director. And that's what I do. So
you work with advising them on policy issues, drafting legislation?
Completely off of that. So I actually work in their political action committee work. So that is recruiting and training candidates determining where our best opportunities are to pick up seats. And that is what I've been focused on. I've hosted 4 or 5 different candidate trainings. We've tried to really throw the doors open on the caucus since I started there, having these big trainings that are open for candidates, potential staff, volunteers, just activists out in the community, trying to build some unity and a movement heading into the 2024 election. And now we're kind of on the tail end of that whole plan.
Right.
And it is now it's blow and go. You know, we've done the trainings, we've done the calls. Now it's get out there, knock doors.
Yeah. And you know, and it seems like as your history has borne out for sure, as soon as the election is over, we are running hard for 2026 because it's going to be big, a lot of big elections in 2026. Of course, the governor's election. And then, you know, locally, many counties will be like ours. All 12 of our county commissioners are up for election.
Yep.
And so,
half of the school board.
Half of the school board. And then we've got, of course, the state representatives again. Mm-hmm. And so 2026 is going to be big. And I'm learning now and I'm just dabbling in it. Nothing like what you're doing, and you're doing it professionally, and I'm just a hobbyist. But we have to start recruiting candidates as soon as November's over. We've got to start for 2026, looking, talking to, working with. I was going to say grooming, but people have changed that word now. Yeah. You can't really say that anymore.
We want to walk with people.
Yes, we want to walk with people. Yes.
We want to get them there.
Well, that's, it's such an interesting path that you've taken because you've really touched a lot of different areas of politics. So I find that fascinating. Is anyone else in your family involved in politics, professionally or even, working with a party?
Not directly. I would say my family is very political. So, a lot of teachers in my family. My mother she works for University of Tennessee Extension, which is nonpartisan, but she also does a lot of community work through the county fair,
right?
The 4-H beef show. All that has an element of politics to it because it's bringing people together to achieve goals and mission-driven teams, basically. My grandmother worked for the USDA, and my aunt Manoa, she's a doctor of women's history. So all that kind of informs my worldview and brought me to this. There's some politicians further back. My grandfather was a state representative and school superintendent, but that was all long before I was born.
Huh. Interesting. And I'm assuming that Democrats are in the minority in Erin, Tennessee.
Yeah. So interesting. Barack Obama won Houston County in 2008.
Well, that's because you were working really hard with your signs and everything.
But like so many other rural counties, the bottom fell out after that election. Mitt Romney won by 150 votes. But then, But by Donald Trump's time, I think he'd won by 1,000. He had really woken up another movement. There had been a lot of aging out, of dying of older Democrats and the New Deal Democrats. Houston County was uniquely known for being blue because of all the New Deal programs in the area.
Okay.
Kentucky Lake,
interesting.
Lake Barkley, Land Between the Lakes, all that had been built up. The TVA, Cumberland Fossil power plant there. So it was known that when we work together and we have these government programs, people can benefit, our community can be developed because of that.
Right.
But there's growing frustration that, what are we getting now?
Yeah. Well, and I think probably a lot of the smaller communities in Tennessee are that way.
Yeah. I think, Ned Ray McWhorter did a lot in the 90s to really dive into rural investment. Bredesen did the same thing. But I think Republicans have been a little better at marketing at us and trying to separate us and divide us. I'm seeing that shift, especially in the suburbs. I think we're going to have to grow out of the suburbs in building that sense of community and collective power. But I think we can get back to rural. Interesting.
Yeah. Of course, I'm based out of Williamson County, which is like a unicorn in some ways. We deal with people who are generally well-heeled, a lot of rich folks. My theory has been, people that I talk to this about will often agree, is that, our voter turnout is so low throughout Tennessee. I mean, we're the lowest in the whole United States, but it's very low in Williamson County. And you would think that well-educated people would understand the importance of getting out and exercising your right to vote. But I just find in Williamson County there's not a pain point. There's not really a lot that people are upset about. So they just don't feel compelled to get up off the easy boy chair and go vote. Most people, not everyone, but most people in Williamson County have money. Most of them have a home. Most of them have all the food that they can eat. They can shop at Publix and Trader Joe's, and they can go out to eat when they want to go, and they can take their kids to Disney World. And it's sometimes I find that when I'm talking to people who are sort of in that demographic, that they're just really doing well in life and they don't feel a pain point. So there's nothing to say, get out and vote. So it seems like we almost have to convince people you're comfortable living right now. The comfortable way you are is being threatened. And when you can convince them of that, then maybe they will get out and vote.
Yeah, I think that work to convince folks is it takes decades, and it's also not that partisan. So
true.
We're seeing changes in Tennessee that go way beyond party. We are seeing nonpartisan groups building power among specific communities. You've got Tennessee Immigrant Refugee Rights Coalition. They are building networks of folks to support each other and to talk about what's happening in the state legislature and how these bills are directly harming their community.
It's funny you bring that up. We're going to talk about one of those bills. Let's go ahead and do that now.
Okay.
Let me see what the number of this bill is.
While you look it up, I do want to say there's a lot of other groups doing the same thing. You're seeing an explosion of pride festivals. You're seeing Equity Alliance organize the Black community and promote civic participation there. So all that is
right.
It's building collective power, and it's not going to be party driven, and it shouldn't be.
True.
We should be because the goal here is not just to break the supermajority; it's to get our legislators to stop even proposing these harmful bills.
Correct.
And that's what this kind of community building does over time.
Yeah, I agree. And what I want them to get back to is where they're passing and they're writing and passing bills to help people, not to hurt certain groups of people, which is how it feels like it went.
Yeah.
That's Senate Bill 2576. So there's a really great article this morning in the Nashville Banner. I don't know if you get the Nashville Banner. But it's that bill is all about immigration, and it requires rather than authorizes. Now, that's important. Requires rather than authorizes local law enforcement to report an individual's immigration status, or more accurately, lack of it, to federal authorities. Now, on face value, someone who doesn't really have a heart for immigrants might read that and think, well, yeah, they shouldn't be here illegally. We should report them to the feds and they need to deport them. Okay. People are welcome to that opinion. However, as with so many things that come out of our legislature, the bill was miswritten. It was vague, is vague, and there's been a lot of discussion about what now? And so police departments are wrestling right now with the idea that this bill means for every encounter a police officer has with a human being, they're supposed to ask their immigration status. So, for example, a woman with a brown face is the victim of a sexual assault. Now her immigration status has to be in question. Well, what does that say to immigrant communities? Don't report anything to the police. Whether you're here legally or not, that's just a hassle, Don't report anything to the police. And then, of course, with my background in criminal justice, I have a master's in criminal justice. And so from time to time, I work in the field, which makes me a criminologist. To be an economist, like Mr. Ogles likes to claim he is, he would need to work in that field, but then also he never has. That's a whole nother topic. But
I don't think they'd want him.
No, they wouldn't, because he clearly cannot handle money. But crime statistics are so important to everybody. But here we are, really skewing them greatly because we're going to cause certain groups of people to not report crimes. But my real point is that here's another bill that's very ambiguous, and it's also aimed at hurting a certain group of people. It's also not given any of the police departments guidance or money on, to train people on how to handle these issues. And that's why these nonpartisan alliances are so very important because, and sometimes, probably like you, my mind goes into the very deep, deep hole. But, my thinking is, how must that make people who have immigrated here legally feel when they think, now I'm in a place where I've got to have my papers with me all the time? And so I like to think, well, what does that make people think of? Well, it sounds like, Nazism to me, where certain groups of people have to walk around all the time proving they have a right to be. And that's really sad. Why do you think the legislature is drafting so many of these ambiguous bills? Many of them end up in court, and it's almost like they know it's going to end up there. And even in this article that was written, they discussed it with a legislator who said, well, and this would be State Senator Brent Taylor, we can take a look back at those things if those become an issue. Are they really just throwing things up on the wall and passing them without even thinking about how it will be implemented?
Yes. Yeah, I don't want to get into like comparing them to other ideologies or other atrocities of other folks in other countries. But a lot of times, yeah, that's exactly what happens. They read an article about something, kind of a knee-jerk reaction article, and they say, oh, I've got to go write a bill about it. And so they send an email to legal and just kind of laying out, oh, let's do this and let's just make it apply to everybody, and then that'll just fix it all. And they make it sound reasonable because when they describe the bill when they're out, and I've experienced this in person with Representative Gino Bulso, when they have a bill like this and they describe it to their constituents, they'll only describe it as, for example, in this bill, well, we're going to, when the police are arrest an illegal immigrant, we're going to make sure that they notify the federal authorities. Well, most people would think, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, even people who work with immigrants might think, well, that kind of makes sense. You've arrested them. They probably should, get reported. But then they don't take in the whole story. So interestingly, in this particular bill that we're discussing, Senator Todd Gardenshire, he was the only Republican to vote against the law, and here's why. He's concerned about the law being applied beyond the way it was written, which was, again, vague and ambiguous. He feared the law could mean that school resource officers would be forced to report children to federal immigration officers. And then the question comes up, when does a 5-year-old know they're breaking the law? Mm-hmm. And when you think about what something like that can do to people, and it will even make immigrants afraid to send their children to school. Yeah.
What are we doing?
Well, I can tell you what Republicans are doing, and they are stopping any good faith attempts to handle all the issues that we've seen around immigration over the past, 50 years.
Why?
We had a real, if you could read the articles, their nominee for president stopped a major bipartisan deal on immigration.
Yes.
Because he wants to campaign on it. He did it twice. He stopped it twice. So there are plenty of ways that we could fix this and make it work and still have a system that is reasonable for folks to follow the law under if they would not stop it. So they'd rather stop the big deal, and then, as the holler says, they'd rather pass lawsuits than laws.
Well, yes, and that sort of goes back to my point about a pain point. If they remove the cause of the pain, some voters will say, okay, I'm not afraid of what it is you're trying to save me from. And in Williamson County, we're infamous for creating problems that don't exist so that the politicians can solve problems that never existed.
Yeah.
Cat litter boxes in the schools, for example, not a problem. Never been a problem.
No.
Filth and pornography in schools, not a problem. Never been a problem.
Yeah.
But, you convince people that exist, and then they want a law against it, So it's interesting that so many of the laws that have been passed are being challenged in the court. And what a waste of time and money for the state.
They've had to expand their budget for lawsuits. because so many of their laws are getting struck down in state and federal court.
So is the bar lobby working hard to help them craft these bad laws?
No, it would be better if the Bar Association was, but no. There's a legal department in the legislature, and the member will email them and say, "This is what I want." And the legal department, their job is not to dissuade them at all. It is to literally write out how they could technically make a law, and they may give a little feedback on how to do it better. But no, there's not a lot of that. And you will see from time to time their own attorney general will try to slow walk some of these bad laws. But if it's got the energy of the caucus or their grassroots Republicans, then it's going to pass anyway.
Which is the supermajority.
And that's why we got to break the supermajority.
How many do we need before?
10. We got to flip 10 seats.
10 seats.
Our goal.
Now, tell the listeners, what is a supermajority and why is that important?
So in most legislative bodies, if you have 2/3 of the seats, then it kind of gives you a free pass to get things done. It allows you to end debate, so that way you can fast walk instead of slow walk bills through there. It allows you to just ram things through. It allows you to expel members, as we have seen, for partisan means. So our job as a Democratic Party is to break that supermajority. It'll get us a few things. It'll get us 2 to 3 people on each committee so we can second our own bills so they can come up for a vote in these committees. They can't just kill all our bills in committee.
And I think that's an important point because a lot of the listeners don't really understand how that works. And I spent a little time at the legislature, and when you see this happening, it's just shocking sometimes. And plus, they're talking like auctioneers.
It's
My
like a
God.
game.
Do they actually practice when they're out of session how to talk that fast? Because it's just ridiculous,
I think they work it out before they walk in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, but like if you're standing in the right space, sometimes you will see a committee chair, then the staffer, and they've got all the bills printed out, and they're marking X's through certain bills, and they're planning to just kill them as soon as they gavel in.
And so in many cases on the committee, let's just say, name a committee.
Agriculture.
Okay, so there'll be one Democrat on the whole committee. And even if the bill he or she is putting forth is just a fabulous idea, if farmers love it, consumers love it, everybody loves it. Mm-hmm. If they're not liking him that day, he gets no second and the bill just dies.
Yeah, and it's really common for some of our more, vocal members, if they've got a bill and if they put their bill at the end of the committee calendar, and they want to get that passed, and they do it at the end. Because then if that member, the Democrat, starts speaking up too much or asks too many questions, then they'll just kill the bill. And that is kind of what they hang over some of these members' heads. Like, if you will sit there and be good, then we might hear your bill.
So let us do all these crazy things, and don't you say a peep about it, and certainly don't talk to Justin Canoe or Holly McCall's people. And if you'll do that and be a good boy, then we might entertain your bill.
Yeah, and thank God, most folks don't take that bargain. They still do the job of holding all these bills account, but their bills suffer for it.
Well, and that's where, given the fact that it's going to take us a while to get out of the supermajority, if we can get more moderate Republicans elected who may partner with Democrats on bills, then that is the way, right? I mean, that's the way to actually maybe get some things done. Our
goal is to flip seats. 3.5 seats a cycle for 3 cycles will get us there. So basically 3-3-4 or 4-3-3 or something like that.
And we're on track for that this time, aren't we?
I think so. We've got, 5 or 6 really strong state house campaigns, probably a little more than that, across the state that they are fundraising. They are knocking lots of doors.
Yes.
Their county parties are excited. You start to see all the things coalescing around them that you would see in a winning race. And that's more than we've had in a long time.
It is. There's an energy for sure.
On top of that, my bosses, Senator Lamar, Representative Clemens, they've raised a pretty good chunk of change to put big investments in a few of these races to put them over the edge. So that's the plan, is to make sure that we are running full races with quality media around them. So that way they can hear us. That's the problem, is you can knock doors, you can reach most of the voters, but a lot of them aren't home.
That's true.
You can post on social media, but only, if 2,000 people follow your Facebook page, which is normal for a state house campaign, but you've got to get 16,000 votes. That means, you're missing 14,000 people there. You've got to find a way to break out of your own echo chamber. And so I think that's where we're headed. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds like a good plan, and I think we're going to see that it's going to work. So let's talk a minute about the big bill, the vouchers. What's your prediction for next year?
Well, there's rumors now that vouchers will be coming either right on the door in January, or there is a rumor. Of course, by the time this airs, we'll know for sure that the governor could go ahead and call his own special session before the election.
Really?
Yeah, his whole primary push wasn't all that successful.
So he needs the ones that are left. But
Yeah.
does he think he's gained any more?
He's picked up some and he's lost some others, right? So like some of his biggest voucher supporters lost. And
No,
then
but I mean, if he does it before they take office, before the election in November.
Yeah. We don't
Because-
have a lame duck period in Tennessee.
So he could call a special session next week, let's say.
In theory, yeah.
And that would be with the current legislature that's sitting without anybody that won or lost any of the primaries.
Yeah.
But he's got to gain some votes because the voucher thing did not pass. Do
Yeah.
you think that some of those that are still there, that he's persuaded them?
Maybe. And there may be kind of a I've already lost or something, that kind of, I'll do whatever you need at this point. That a lot of that's conjecture. And my gut is saying they probably won't call the special session. They're going to let the election play out.
Well,
But
special sessions have not gone well for us
they
lately.
have not.
So.
Last year was really,
And and I've asked this to more than one person who sat in the chair you're sitting in right now. What I cannot understand is overwhelmingly voters are against vouchers in Tennessee. What would possess a candidate for office to say I'm going to vote for vouchers when he or she knows people are against them?
they don't care about what the majority of people want anymore. And they haven't for a long time.
And they feel certain that that issue is not enough to get people not to vote for them.
Right. They are convinced that because they have the supermajority and they haven't lost seats in a long time, that all they have to do is keep the Republican primary base happy. And that's it. That's their job. So they'll my guess is they get a poll at the beginning of session and it tells them what the Republican primary base wants, ranked in order, which is, pretty typical poll question.
But vouchers
and then they just pass that.
But vouchers is at the very bottom.
Among general election voters, among regular people. But if you are, watching Fox News every day, or you believe Betsy DeVos should be in charge of our education,
Oh my God.
then you want that. And, you're probably a third of the state, but that third also happens to be a big majority of Republican primary voters. And a lot of these folks, they're afraid of what can happen. They're more afraid of what could happen in a Republican primary than they are in a general election. I think we're going to change that dynamic. I think we flip some seats this fall and they start to see that there is a limit. There is a limit to what they can do, and that they're going to have to start thinking about the views of all Tennesseans.
Right. Well, and of course, in Williamson County, where I live and vote, we had the situation in the Republican primary, which I did not vote in because I'm definitely a Democrat. But, we say more moderate Republican in Brian Bethard. He's not really that moderate. He's definitely a Republican, but he lost to Lee Reeves, and the voucher lobbyist PACs put $1 million into a race. What does a state representative make? What's their salary?
Yeah, like $20,000 a year plus a per diem, so probably $30,000 to $40,000 a year.
So a person like me, who's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but also not a dull butter knife, would wonder, why would somebody spend $1 million for a $30,000 job?
Yeah, well, it's not the candidate spending that money, right?
No,
it's
right.
the special interest group.
But why would the special interest spend that much money on? Is running private schools that lucrative?
$4 million is what they spent in this package.
Is
right?
running private schools that lucrative?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to. They spent $4 million on these Republican primaries to flip them. What's the amount sitting in the state budget right now to go to vouchers, and we didn't even pass it?
I don't know.
It's several $100 million. It's like $300 or $400 million just for vouchers that we haven't even passed yet. So that's a 1% investment for a 1,000 times return.
So for people like me who really need to understand it more fully, so what you're saying is that all of the voucher money then will go to open up a lot of new private schools, because a lot of existing private schools say we're not going to take vouchers anyway.
Yeah.
The more expensive ones in Williamson County, for example, they're not interested in that. And so they're going to open up a lot of new private schools. And so what you're saying is that these groups must know that the profit to be made in those schools is worth their investment. Because I think that lobby money, PAC money, those are investments. And very few of them are throwing money at something just out of altruistic means.
Yeah, I think there's some low dollar donors out there on both sides who truly believe, and they spend a couple $100 a year on political donations. There's a big chunk in the middle who are spending anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000, and they probably do see it as some kind of investment or transaction. But you get up into the billionaires, and they're really wanting to buy this country and reshape it for themselves.
So it's power for them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of very rich people out there that see public schools as an existential threat to their livelihood. Public schools are a public good, and they show us that working together is better than being,
right
on our own.
Right.
They show us that people who look and act differently than us are still part of our community, and that's a beautiful thing. And that's scary if you're on the other side of that and you want us to be divided. And so that's the end game for a lot of these big dollar folks, is they're wanting to blow up public schools. And you're seeing it. Louisiana, Arizona, you're seeing big plays for money at the expense of public schools.
And now they're actually, I think the citizens are feeling that money crunch, though. They're realizing, oh no, this is costing way more than they told us it would. And, in Tennessee, we have a lot of rural areas, like most states, but, we have a lot of rural areas where there are no private schools. There probably won't be any private schools. And if there were, let's say vouchers gets in, if there were, they're not going to have the money for a bus service. And I mean, when you live in a town that, most of the workers work in a factory type blue collar situation, I mean, you depend on the school. You can take the child there very early. They get their breakfast, their lunch. There's an after school program. The bus gets them home. That's a huge part of their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so these vouchers are going to do nothing for those folks.
It does nothing for working people.
Nothing.
It's structured for just a few to really benefit. And certainly in like suburbs and urban areas, it's also going to mean a huge tax increase. Property taxes will have to go up because every dollar you put into vouchers is a dollar we take away from public schools.
Right.
It is a seesaw.
And the public schools will still have to exist for all these other kids. And of course, then, my state representative, I don't even like claiming it, but the state representative that represents the area where I live, Gino Bulso, I mean, he talks about religious formation. So his idea is that these vouchers will be able to pay for these religious-based schools to come about. And, that's bothersome in a lot of ways. Well, let's flip the coin a little bit. Not really flipping the coin, but let's just go to, play side B. Core Civic.
Yeah.
Core Civic. I know in our state constitution it says that they can only have one Core Civic prison in the state, yet they have more. What's their workaround?
I think, I haven't read the statute, but I have heard reference to it. My understanding is the state can only contract with one, but I think multiple counties have built facilities.
Yeah, and they build them and then they lease them.
They contract it. I mean, if you hear a sheriff talk about running a jail or running a corrections facility, they talk about beds. Right. And they have a rate per day, per bed. And so my guess is that's where that's coming. They're coming around the corner on that. Okay. And getting it, so many beds can go to, the state or the county or juvenile justice detention, things like that.
How how powerful do you think the core civic lobby is?
I mean, they are one of the top donors in the state.
And my understanding is I don't know if he's their overall CEO, but the head guy from around here may run for governor.
Really?
Yeah.
That's news to me. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, wouldn't be the first time we've had a CEO up and decide that they need to be running things.
Right. I've got to think that one would come with a lot of baggage.
Yeah, but in a Republican primary, I don't know that sometimes baggage helps on their side. So, it's really gross, double dipping and trying to pull in all this public money,
right?
And profiting off of incarceration. It's one of the saddest things about our country that you can even think of doing that.
It's insane too, because if we were, if incarcerating people truly reduced crime, we would be the safest nation on the face of the earth, based on the number of people we incarcerate.
Yeah.
Now, I think that there's a lot of other very deep issues involved, boiling it down to, systemic racism and many, many other things.
And the lack of mental health care.
It's shocking.
The Great Reduction. I mean, I'm not saying our mental health hospitals in the 1950s and 1960s were good by any stretch of the imagination, but just shutting them down and having nothing to replace them with other than prisons also isn't working.
Oh, clearly it's not working. And, we have a lot of veterans with mental health issues, and, the unhoused are suffering. And we're, when I look at things, both from my criminology point of view and just as a human being, I see that as the thing that our country should really be most ashamed of, that we're just warehousing people and expecting them to come out and not do the bad thing again.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's very harmful to our society in so many ways. And I cannot imagine, I'm a person of privilege. I'm a white person. I can't imagine going to bed every night and having young black sons that I'm raising in this atmosphere. It's something that we just don't think of that often, and
well, we don't think of it.
We don't think of it, but they do.
There's a lot of folks, they can't not think about it.
Right, right. They do. And, we've heard they have the talk with them and all that. And I know that in our state, it seems like so many of the laws that are passed by the legislature are aimed at certain groups of people, curtailing their behavior, harming them, laws against LGBTQ, laws against the rights of women to control their bodies, so many things. And it seems hard for you and I to sit here and say, yes, we can work our way out of that, but it's going to take 3 or 4 election cycles.
Well, it took us a long time to get here. So, I'll give a little bit of credit to our Republican siblings. Democrats controlled the state for practically 150 years.
That's true.
I think they had a trifecta for 2 years back in the 70s. Other than that, it was all us all the time. And they steadily chipped away at it. They really got together in the 90s, early 2000s, and they decided we've got to get on message. We've got to have sustained organizing in some of these target districts. And they chipped away until 2008, 2010, 2012. That was when the bottom really dropped out for us. But they built up to have their moment. And so that's our opportunity. And as a party, is figuring out where the battleground is. So I'm assuming people will be hearing this in the final stretches of the election. And people should be looking for those races. Find out where you can donate. Get in your car on the weekend and go knock doors in a district.
Absolutely. It's fun. It's actually fun. And what a lot of people don't know is when you do that, you're not going to knock on doors of people that are already decided to vote for the other person. Yeah. You're going to knock on more friendly doors. Mm-hmm. And it's a fun way to get to know people, and you feel like you're doing something for your candidate. And I always like to say, if you can't do that, like you mentioned earlier, there are other things you can do. There's text banking that you can do, which is so easy to do from your phone. There's writing postcards. I've got a stack of 300 postcards at home right now that I'm doing to swing states to remind people to get out and vote. Didn't cost me a dime. There's a group that's paying for all that. So there are a lot of things you can do.
But back to your point about hope.
Right.
And how do you have hope? For me, it is the people that are stepping up to run, and how, as we say, the people that are closest to the pain should be closest to the power. The people affected by what's going on should be the ones crafting solutions.
Right.
And so for me, hope is a young mother, Allie Phillips, who had to go to New York and have an abortion to save her own life, running for office so that way she could try to overturn our cruel abortion ban.
What a great story. Yes.
It is Shondell Brooks, who lost her son in the Waffle House shooting and has fought at the state and national level for common sense gun reform, running so she could try to pass real change so no other mother loses their son like she has.
Right.
It is Louise Mata, who's an immigrant organizer who spent years building that community we're talking about and trying to make sure our state legislature doesn't pass harmful laws.
Correct.
Claire Jones, healthcare provider, nurse.
Claire's a nurse. She does hospice work, and she also had a nurse friend who was shot and killed on the highway on her way to work.
That's right.
Yeah. And she has young children in school. She kind of hits all the boxes.
They face the pain. It's also Jesse Huseth in Memphis, a former teacher, small business owner, who has seen what we've done to public education over the last, because it's not just vouchers. Like, we've done a lot to attack schools for the past 15 years.
I was just talking about that with a guest I interviewed before you, and we have changed, what schools are allowed to teach. We have, shockingly to me, we have even decided to vilify teachers and librarians.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would see that. I mean, as kids, we all looked up to our teachers. We always looked at teachers as, wow, you're doing a job that you really aren't making that, being paid that much to do, and you're doing it because you love kids. And now to hear someone say that they're groomers, that's just, as a person who
Complete
understands
disrespect.
what that word really means, it's shocking, to think that somebody really believes that Miss Susie's getting up every morning, getting in her car at 6:30 to go, stand on the car drop-off line at the school to work with children all day, is doing it because she wants to groom those children.
Yeah, and it shows that they don't know teachers.
They don't.
They don't have close friends that are teachers, and they don't know how hard it is to be a teacher in Genesee.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Sparks, a representative in Rutherford County, he's quoted as saying that teachers make more than people realize. And it just shows what the mentality is.
Lost his mind.
They're not there to fight for working class people and make sure they have what they need to succeed. They are there to just mess around with stuff.
Well, my hope is that for the next session that we can at least get through the first 2 weeks without any crazy quotes coming up. I don't want to hear about somebody marrying their second cousin. I don't want to hear about teachers making more than we think they make. Yeah. I'm just hoping that we can maybe start the session with a sense of hope and reasonableness. And I think if we have these wins that you and I have discussed, that may help with that.
Yeah, I think my guess is you'll have some that, if we flip seats, they may dig in and get worse. So that's always a possibility.
Do you think Sexton is going to still be in his same position, or are they going to challenge that?
I don't know. I mean, they always seem a lot more monolithic and together until they aren't. So I think we flip 3 seats or more, or flip one or 2 seats. It would be first time we've done that in a while.
And they may be mad at him.
They might. But I mean, the responsibility of elections doesn't just fall on the speaker. It's also the caucus chair. So
sure,
there may be a change there.
They don't always think reasonably like that.
No, they don't. So, yeah, I don't know.
So, last question. Your hunch on who's going to run for governor?
Oh, wow. We got a good crop of folks that could do it.
Well, we do, but they're probably not going to run. So who do you think is going to run?
I mean, I got some really good bosses that I think.
I'm talking about Republicans.
Oh, on their side.
Yeah.
So I have heard that Sexton is not running for governor, that there's a whole other deal going, and that Green, who was for sure going to run for governor, might run for Senate now. John Rose might run for governor instead. Which I think if John Rose runs, that opens up since he's not as well known as some of these others, it might open up a CEO or
so
something.
So if Mark Green runs for Senate, whose place is he taking?
Haggerty.
And where's Haggerty going?
There's rumors that he wants to go into administration, or he may run for governor himself.
However, when Kamala wins, that nixes that whole little scheme, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because I'm pretty sure she's not hiring Bill Haggerty to do anything.
I don't think he might submit an application, but I don't think it would go anywhere.
So some of their little planning depends on Trump winning.
Yeah. I mean, it's always a ladder and a wheel at the same time.
Right. Well,
I'm hopeful about we'll have some good statewide candidates.
We will have some good. Who do you think? Can you say?
I mean, well, I've not heard anyone say they're for sure running. But there's also a Senate race.
Yes, there is.
And, we may have you'll have another batch of congressional. So, I mean, we've got, Representative Pearson, Representative Jones, Representative Johnson may want to try for something else. You've also got Representative Clemens and Senator London Lamar that are all out there. I think we'll have a full ticket in a way that we kind of skipped out on for a little bit. Right. I think we don't have to worry about that. I think we'll have strong name recognition and real organizing much earlier on this time.
Exciting. Well, I want to have you back again because we don't have time now, but I want to talk about Project 2025 and how Tennessee is passing law after law ahead of everybody else, kind of as lab rats to test it out.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that next time. Now, Chazz,
either way,
I know, Chazz. If someone wanted to keep up with you, tell our listeners where they can find you.
I'm on Twitter probably more than I should be.
And what's your handle?
Twitter, it's at Charles Uffelman, Uffelman.
Yeah, I can't call it X. That's so weird.
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm currently the chair of the Montgomery County Democrats. So if you live in that area, come and see us. We've got lots of events. And y'all are really doing a good job. And what's your Facebook page for the Montgomery County Democrats? MCTNDP is all my county party branding. Okay. And then you won't see me referenced. I'm a little more behind the scenes, but you can keep up with the House Democratic Caucus and the House or the Senate Democratic Caucus as well. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. And to keep my producer happy, I'm going to remember to ask people to like, subscribe, and share Blue Lift. I really appreciate you being here. This is where we remind our listeners that everybody has a voice and every voice matters. This is Blue Lift.